thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
I promise we're about to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Good. Oh, hold on a second. Let me fix this. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. There we go. There we go, guys. Yes. And good morning, you guys. It is Wednesday, November 5th, and today is National Stress Awareness Day.
Our heads are exploding, right, Shaun? The stress is there.
I just told you guys how my morning went, so yeah.
Yes.
Stress Awareness Day.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't been to the disco yet this morning. Probably gonna make a little visit.
Mm-hmm. It's also National Love Your Red Hair Day today.
Oh, I have a grandson who's a ginger, so there you go. Shout out to Noah.
I have red undertones in the sun, but not a full gingy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a little leprechaun-looking guy.
Shout out to Jesse. Jesse's a ginger.
Yeah, it's one of those weird anomalies. I got him from chocolate brown to ginger in grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah. And it is also National Doughnut Day.
Doughnut. Oh.
Yeah, they're not talking about the joints that all the heady boys smoke, Dale. Okay, they're talking about the donuts that you get from Wenchels or Dunkin' Donuts. You know what I mean? You know, you get a baker's dozen. You know what I mean? All of that. That's what they're talking about.
Well, my cousin owns a donut shop in Lake Havasu, so shout out to the donut makers out there and all the cops who love them.
Yes, they're out just running rings around people.
There they go.
Mm-hmm. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.high9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And kicking it off this morning, man, do I have an interesting story for you. Because Canadian Rogan says the push to ban hemp THC drinks is very, very threatened by the expanding market, you guys. That's right. Actor and cannabis icon Seth Rogen says the push to restrict or ban sales of THC beverages amid their rise in popularity shows that clearly someone is very threatened by them. But he expects the hemp drink market to prevail in response to consumer demand. Rogan, whose own cannabis brand Houseplant launched a line of infused beverages last year, spoke about cannabis culture and policy issues in an interview with Bon Appetit that was published on Wednesday. Asked for his thoughts about the future of the marijuana industry, the comedian said he thinks THC drinks are very clearly a hot area of discussion. And you see clearly someone is very threatened by them because of a lot of states have a lot of lobbying and a pressure to not sell them. To that point, federal records show that the last 3 months have seen a surge in congressional lobbying from major alcohol companies and associations aiming to influence federal hemp laws with a focus on THC beverages that many consumers are turning to as beer and liquor alternatives. Rogen said THC drinks are a really good entry-level weed product for people who are afraid of cannabis. And a lot of people drink alcohol. A lot of people are looking for some sort of release. And I actually think weed is probably a very good choice for a lot of people who don't think it is a good choice for them, he said. It's about finding the right way to consume it by smoking it, but whatever. He also pushed back against state-level efforts to restrict cannabis products and says, the idea that should be allowed to happen in every state is really patronizing to people. It's threatening people like they're idiots, or what she said, it's treating people like they're idiots, Rogen said. We're not stupid. We know what this does. We know it's not more dangerous than alcohol. The idea that it's getting into some restaurants and bars and sports arenas, to me, is really exciting. I've always said until it's an easy to buy weed as it is to buy alcohol, there is a major gap in logic at play, he added. If you sell beer, there's no reason not to sell THC beverages, and some places have actually started to do that. That is really encouraging and exciting and suggests a cultural shift that is tremendous. Tremendous, he said. Beyond restaurants and sporting venues, cannabis beverages are also making their way onto shelves at commercial retailers, including Target, which recently launched a pilot program to sell THC-infused drinks for adults at select locations throughout Minnesota. A recent poll found that the marketing decision to be popular among a majority of cannabis consumers, and separately, a subsidiary of a multi-state marijuana company is suing DoorDash, Total Wine, and several other businesses for allegedly violating Virginia hemp laws by marketing cannabis products that exceed the legal THC limit. In the interview with Bon Appetit, Rogen also commented on shifting public perceptions of cannabis and his own role in dissolving stigmas associated with marijuana use through his acting and comedy. He recounted how retired late-night host David Letterman once told him that no one talks about this. Even marijuana legend Woody Harrelson was very coy about it and wouldn't directly say he smoked weed all the time. Now he does. And now he has a dispensary. But at that time, it was not a thing that actors in mainstream movies did, Rogen said. The actor also said that cannabis culture has evolved in large part over the years because people have started to see that the reasons weed was illegal in the first place were highly dubious. In a quote, he says, "They've started to question why weed would be so hard to access when alcohol is so easy. It seems like a new lie kind of prevails every now and then from whomever wants weed to remain illegal," he said. First, it'll make you go freaking crazy, and then it'll make you lazy, and then it's a gateway drug, and slowly people's own experience tells them that you can be lazy and crazy and become a drug addict without ever trying weed, and you could smoke some weed and never have any of those things happen to you. Beyond his contributions to cannabis culture and the industry, Rogen has also leveraged his celebrity to advocate for reform, including in 2021, when he and other influencers like comedian Sarah Silverman launched a campaign meant to encourage U.S. voters to reach out to their senators and demand action on legislation to federally legalize cannabis. Either this year, the actor also disclosed the one place he refuses to use cannabis, which is Singapore, which maintains some of the strictest anti-drug laws in the world. Well, maybe you should also consider adding to that list Indonesia, too. But nonetheless, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Seth Rogen. I mean, do we really, you know what I'm saying, think that his voice matters that much?
Houseplant. They do really, really well in other markets in mainstream media. This is an article in Bon Appetit. Do you know how hard it would be to place a THC article in Bon Appetit? Like, or any kind of commentary? Let me correct myself. This isn't a marijuana moment or one of those articles, but Seth was commenting on this in Bon Appetit, which is a mainstream publication. We need to be having those conversations and putting more cannabis products in mainstream spaces to normalize. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know why people would be upset about this. I'm excited for functional beverages. Why wouldn't people, especially those who consume, I get it's not medical cannabis for those who are upset about it, but not everything needs to be medical cannabis. And there's definitely a space for functional wellness. And if I could have that at a bar instead of alcohol, I would take it I would actually go out more often. I don't drink, so they are losing all of my patronage. This is great. Why are people upset about this? I don't get it. I'm really like missing the boat on why people would not want this.
Well, I think what Seth is talking about is that we're getting control of the narrative now. In 1937, we really had nothing to say about the lies put forward to make, cannabis illegal, the Marijuana Tax Act. Even in 1970, no one really consulted anybody out there other than the drug warriors and people in the Congress put forward an absolute lie that there's no accepted medical use for cannabis. And we've been playing that game back and forth now for decades. And what happens when you allow people to use it, they have their experience, they go, you know what, you've been bullshitting me my entire life about this. Now, are you still lying to me about stuff? And the answer is yeah, because it's not a gateway drug. People they're moved beyond that. They understand it. It's safer than alcohol or tobacco, and those products are out there. You can buy tobacco easier than you can buy cannabis in most parts of the United States. Okay? And people understand that the narrative we've been given is just not actually accurate. Okay? And the other problem here is one we've been warning about for a while. When big business gets involved and you threaten their profits, things happen that you may not know the exact answer to why they happen, but they happen. If you're making $1 billion a year and you're going to lose 25% of your profits, do the math. How much are you willing to expend in lobbying to stop this stuff from happening? And if you're in the cannabis industry and you're barely paying your bills, every one of these lobbying organizations is begging for money right now. Okay? And because they don't have the funds, the people losing money will throw in this. But in spite of all of that, people aren't stupid. They see what's going on. So, yeah, the more this gets in the hands of people and they understand that I can sit here and have a drink rather than alcohol that will hit me relatively quickly. I think they're manufacturing this stuff to have nanotechnology get into you pretty quickly, that you can take a drink and within a matter of minutes begin to have the high effect. When you take an alcohol drink, within minutes you get the high effect. People want that as a substitute for alcohol. And the younger generations just don't buy the bullshit that adults have been feeding them their whole life about this. They just don't anymore.
I love that. People do want a substitution. And then some folks are upset or saying cannabis consumers only want to smoke. Yeah, they do. But also, look, I'll be let's be frank. I'm getting up into my 40s. I'll be getting up there. And I'm not that old. I'm still in the middle. You notice changes in your body. And you notice maybe your cardio system isn't what it used to be. Maybe at least for me as an athlete, I want to be able to train. I want to feel really good in the morning. If I can replace my breakfast bowl with a beverage, especially if it has THCV, I'm going for that. On that same note, we need to be really careful because we can't just, even with THCV, you don't want to be overdosing, folks. You don't want to have too much of that. It can be very activating, just like caffeine. You don't need to be drinking 12 pots of coffee. It'll make you sick. Let's get some standards in there. Let's get some safety practices in there. But we're not going to know any of that until we remove these chains and actually start expanding the market. I think yay for Seth. Thank you for speaking up for hemp beverages in general, and saying that it is often, and Dale, I can't tell you how many calls I've had this week from lobbyists who are pitching for money and they can't get anything from the industry. You guys, if you want to have your plants free, you have to pay the people doing the work. And then it's so funny because those same people get called shills paid chills. It's like, who's paying for this? I'm,
Yep.
you know, a lot of folks are working for it for free because it's absolutely necessary. And we're trying to keep people out of jail. The industry needs to invest in itself. It's got to stop being so myopic with its lens of focus. It's so, sometimes folks are so self-centered and they think that they're acting in their best interests, and what they really do is shooting them, like what Dale likes to say, they're pissing up a rope, and it's when the wind is blowing in their face. Like, you gotta consider the whole, because we're building an industry, an American industry. It's bigger than just one company. Sorry if I went off there.
Well, you know, in National Disgrace in the chat, he says, why can't we just sit at the bar and hit my bong instead? And I'm kind of with him on that. You know what I mean? I'm kind of with him on that. Like, I don't want to go there and order no cannabis beverage. I mean, come on, we already have enough sugar in our diet, Shaun. I'd way rather smoke some trees as opposed to having an infused beverage where I'm going to be, you know, guzzling all of these sugars and whatnot that you're, you know, talking about in your 40s is not really good for you. Sugar is actually way worse for you than anything else you consume. What do you guys say about that?
Well, there's momentum. There's momentum going on here, okay? And we can't lose sight of the fact every time we talk about they're fighting over some new cannabis product, what we're seeing is the market is being flooded with these products. People are getting their hands on them, and they're seeing that we've been given a truckload of horse shit for so long, we don't believe you anymore. Okay? But the adults in the room have to remind everybody this is not the biggest issue going on in the country. So if you try to take all the oxygen, you're going to fall on your face. You got to put it into the context. And at some point, even the most rabid, violent opponents to this are going to go, oh, you guys are right all the time. Now, we're not there yet. They're still fighting us with horse shit they're throwing at us. But this is not the hard problem we see with tobacco and alcohol and opioids. Or meth. It is not. People don't buy anymore. And to your point, Jason, the problem you have with smoking is they keep comparing it to tobacco. And
yeah, we all know that's bullshit.
They don't like to have an expert tell them that, you know, no one's ever been diagnosed with cancer caused by cannabis smoking. Okay, so all the comparisons to tobacco don't hold any water because it doesn't affect what they call apoptosis. Normal cell death takes place. You don't have any increased risk of cancer. People are getting that. So we'll get there eventually. But right now, in California, you got to put up an HVAC system that'll pull your shirt over your head just to smoke a joint inside of a building. Like, this is ridiculous. You know, it's not there yet, but the momentum is taking us there. And I just wish it was quicker, because I've been doing this for 26 years, and damn, I'm getting old. Keep hoping you guys are going to fix this problem before I croak.
I feel like beverages will be one of the faster pathways, at least towards normalization, as opposed to smoke. And then for the sugar, Jason, there's going to be ingredients. Everyone's going to come out with their own formula and their own beverage, their own niche, and some of them are going to be sugary. And I have the same feedback for a lot of edibles. Like, as a consumer, it really, because I consume for my autoimmune disease. So sugar, the gelatin, all of the things that we emulsify right now, it's been frustrating. That's why I rely on flour so much, especially like dry flower vaporization. But if we can get some healthy bevs in there, so you can have a breakfast bev, and then if later you want to have something a little more relaxing, you know, a little more chill, you can do that. But yeah, Dale, to your point with the nano emulsification and other technologies that are going to start to come forward, there are companies working on things like this. The onset of effects happening faster is a good thing, because it'll help people to actually pace themselves. And then I'm looking forward to when the beverages I know operators don't want to hear this, but I'm looking forward when the beverage prices come down, because it's got to be a little more normal, and you bring them down. You can
it's expensive. I mean, beverages are heavy. There's a lot of labor involved in moving them from one place to another, and because they're so heavy, that means that they cost higher fuel prices and everything to move them back and forth, and your insurance is up when you carry those types of products, because all of a sudden the likelihood of someone hurting themselves from lifting something heavy is much more likely. And so the beverages are not the way. This shit is stupid.
No, beverages are a good way for normalization for the mass population, those who aren't used to cannabis consumption.
They're not.
More of them, I'm telling you, more of those Dallas moms feel comfortable with a cocktail in their hand, with a non-alc infused cocktail, than they would lighting up a joint. It's socially.
Maybe that first part of the word, Shaun. Maybe
I think the majority market is going to be way more amenable to bevs than smokable flower. Even though I love smokable flower, and I'm all for growing the plant and growing in your own backyard. I still think the majority market, once we reach normalization, majority market is going to be in inconspicuous consumables.
Mm-hmm. Didn't even catch what I actually said, but it's okay. Okay.
I thought maybe I misunderstood. At the top of the hour, I'm out of flour right now, so not all the wheels are.
Oh, you jonesing for a joint.
Fair enough. All right. What I think we're gonna go. I think we're gonna go no commercials today, just to make it easier. Just because I'm on the road today, I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. We'll get the commercials back going tomorrow. You guys good with that?
Yeah, we could do that.
We'll power through this. All right. So I'm going to go to my next story, you guys, because, Dale, this is for you, Dale. Because the Teamsters, that's right, the unions, I happen to be in Vegas today. They win the longest strike in U.S. cannabis industry history as York, Pennsylvania workers ratify its first contract. That's right. Workers at Green Thumb Industries and Rise Dispensary in York, Pennsylvania have ratified their first Teamsters contract following a 45-day strike, the longest successful strike in U.S. cannabis history. The employees, represented by Teamsters Local 776, voted to approve the agreement after nearly 7 weeks on the picket line. The new contract includes paid holidays and bereavement leave. Bereavement leave, Dale? Guaranteed annual wage increase. What is it?
Bereavement. Somebody close to you dies.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Guaranteed annual wage increases and fair process for disciplinary issues. In a quote, they say, "This is a monumental achievement, and it's entirely due to the grit and bravery of our members," said Ed Thompson, president of Local 776. "By winning this strike, these men and women have set the stage for thousands of other cannabis workers to join our cause." Look at that. They're totally always just trying to self-promote themselves. The record-setting strike surpassed the previous benchmark established 2 years ago by GTI Teamsters in Illinois, where local union leaders say the new contract not only improves working conditions, but could also influence other labor negotiations across expanding cannabis industry. In a quote, they say, "This is a perfect example of how the Teamsters contracts can bring long-term prosperity to workers throughout the industry," said Jesse Case, director of the Teamsters Food Processing Division. "By raising the bar at multi-state operators nationwide, our union benefits workers, consumers, and proprietors in cannabis." Workers credited strong community and customer support for helping sustain the strike, and the outpouring of support we received from customers, the community, and our union brothers and sisters embodies what solidarity is all about, said John Stombaugh, a patient care specialist. And Teamsters Local 776 represents thousands of workers across Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia, you guys. well, these workers got totally screwed. They're going to continue to get screwed, especially by these unions, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Well, as you know, Jason, one of my grandfathers was a Teamster, and I didn't know all the places they might have beat somebody up or burned a building down, but definitely got their point across, and by the 1950s, they were doing quite well. Okay? But my other grandfather ran a small business, and it's not possible to provide all these benefits in a small business setting. So there you have sort of the struggle. Has cannabis gotten large enough? Can it absorb the call them benefits of union representation, their workers, that's a question that I think the jury's still out on. I mean, I'm one that doesn't cross picket lines. It's just I was taught that as a kid. It's part of my nature. But I also understand my grandfather, when you can't pay the bills, start laying people off.
Yeah.
And I built a lot of these businesses from scratch, and it is the issue we have to face. California, it was 20, now I think it's down to 10 workers. You've got to do a labor peace agreement, and they're fighting about that because when we do the math after 280E, no matter how I manipulate management, service contracts, and all that stuff, you don't have a lot left over. Okay? Now, they got rid of 280E and some of the other just excessive regulatory and tax costs. This wouldn't be the same discussion. But the industry, if you know, in California is circling the drain. And everything you do to add more costs onto these people that own these businesses just makes it more difficult. So for me, the jury's still out about how much the unions can actually represent in this industry before the businesses start to tank. What that's going to mean for the union contracts and the representation they have. I don't really have an answer. I channel George Carlin. The older I get, I go to 30,000 feet and look at all this and go, look at all the bullshit happening, all these directions. Everyone has a story of what's actually going to happen. I don't know. I try to call balls and strikes here, but I don't know. I wouldn't be going out there putting on your resume that we did all this stuff until you can prove that you're actually benefiting the company and that it's going to make it a viable place for these union workers to actually be employed and continue to be employed.
What do you think, Shaun?
I think Dale summed it up. This is it's hard to, this is like one of those fights you don't want to be in. Boy, it would be a really good case for mediation. You gotta, I would have to see the insides of the contract because it's hard to make general rules. And I hear what Dale is saying about the business expenses, operating costs, overhead, and actually being able to operate. Like, it would be nice. Everybody wants to give their team the world. Sometimes you don't have the world to give, though. And then Uncle Sam also wants his cut and his taxes and his fees, and it's insane. But we need to be designing our businesses to consider how they can scale with our workforces and how they can support them as you grow, because it's important, like bereavement leave. I think that's important, the paid time off, etc. Standard in any other space, but at the same time, we need to be so cautious about making rules about this stuff because we, like I said earlier today, we're still standing up this industry. It's in its infancy. Even if you've been in it for a really long time, when you look at American-made industries, this is very young still. Even the nation is still very young. So we need to give it some room to develop. At the same time, we need to take care of our people. There's way too many people not getting paid in cannabis. It's infuriating. So I can see it on both sides. That I'd have to dig into the specifics of the contract to make a good judgment.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Well, I can tell you it's probably not going to end well. But nonetheless, we're going to keep this train rolling. Glad the workers are back to work, though, and the strike is over with overall. You know what I mean? So, but coming up next, we're going to roll right into attorney at law, Mr. Dale Schafer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He has represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he has specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet, they're nasty, and they turn your teeth yellow on top of other things yellow. But he is honest, and he's unconcerned with public opinion, your opinion, or anyone else's opinion, however else they want to identify. And he will tell you and show you how to defy gravity by pissing up a rope. That's right, it is your favorite Tio Loco, and you can now find him at his own law office at the law office of none other than Dale Schafer.
Good morning, everybody. It's your Tio Loco, your favorite crazy uncle today, and my favorite full of shiticus. If you can't laugh at yourself, you really don't belong around here. This is continuation of the story that I started last week about the attack on the Raich versus Gonzalez case. And it comes out of Marijuana Moment on 3rd by Carl Yeager. And it includes some quotes and some information by Josh Schiller, who appears to be the attorney from Boyce Schiller that is going to be involved in actively litigating this case. And it was interesting to me for multiple reasons, because what he talked about was their strategy in getting here. And full disclosure, yesterday I watched an interview that he did before his appellate case was decided, about what he was trying to accomplish here. So it helped fill in some of the gaps. And Josh is a partner at Boyce Schiller. His dad was one of the founding partners. So what they did here was, from the gate, they understood that they're going to lose at the trial and probably the appellate level. They set this case up so they would get the maximum amount of information in front of the Supreme Court as they got there. Okay. So what we're looking at here in the big sense is that before and after rates, there have been 3 big cases that kind of drew a boundary the federal government's exercise of Commerce Clause power. We're talking about with Raich is taking the Commerce Clause to a ridiculous extreme. Okay? And Schiller calls it an outlier opinion. I happen to agree, but let's give you some of the 4 corners of this. Okay? In 1995, in the case called U.S. versus Lopez, the Supreme Court took a look at a Gun-Free School Zone Act that the federal government said they could do under Commerce Clause power. Okay? And this kid got caught with a gun on school campus. And the state took a case against him. They gave it up when the Fed stepped in. And ultimately, the Supreme Court said that possession of a gun is not a commercial activity. What do you think you're doing here? Making this about the Commerce Clause. States have all the power they need under their police powers to regulate this. This is an extension of the Commerce Clause we're not going to abide by. Get out of here. So there was a limit put on it. If it's not economic activity, now get out of here. And in 2000, we had the case of U.S. versus Morrison. It was a rape case, a sexual assault. And the feds passed a law that gave standing in federal court to the victim of gender relationship violence. Okay? The court looked at that and said, hang on for a second. Commerce and rape, connection just isn't there. Okay? This is a gross extension of the idea of federalism. These powers belong to the state. The state will go after and prosecute someone who raped somebody. This extension of federal police power is an overreach. Okay? So we had that sort of a limitation put on there. And then while I was in prison, they decided the Obamacare case. It's the Sebelius case. National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sebelius. She was the Secretary of I think Health and Human Services at the point. And it was the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And they were trying to impose commerce power, excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat, to force you to pay a premium in Obamacare that you didn't want. Okay? And so they took a look and said, hey, hang on for a second. Your commerce power not force you to do something you ordinarily would not want to do. That's an overreach of federal power. John Roberts found that it was a tax and found that it was okay. They struck down the use of the Commerce Clause to force someone to buy this insurance. Okay. Now, they said that if the law that you're talking about was created by a statute, not by the underlying federal power that grants this enumerated power, and it fails on its own. You can't create this kind of power by statute. You got to look at the Constitution and make sure it's there. That's where the federal government gets its power. So these are 3 decisions in and around where Raich sets, and they aren't afraid to draw a line and say, no, we're not going to do this. Now, one of the other issues that we're going to be dealing with here is, how do you determine when the government tells you that they need to do this, there really is an actual need there? What's the standard of review here? Now, in the Raich case, they use what we call the rational basis. If it's a legitimate power and it's rationally related to a legitimate power, you don't have to prove you have the constitutional enumerated power to do it. But we're not talking about this. We're talking about an enumerated power, Commerce Clause. The other standard that's been used is strict scrutiny. This has got to be necessary to further a compelling state interest. And in those, you have to prove that this is a constitutional power you've got. So I don't know that they're going to impose strict scrutiny on this. There's another level of scrutiny called intermediate scrutiny, where they look to the relationship between the power has to be substantial. It's got to be an important right that the government has. So we'll see how that's going to work out. How they determine if the government says we need this power, it's like, okay, come to court and prove to us. And this is important today, and many of the things going before the court, Trump administration is doing. They're declaring they have some predicate to exercise federal power, and you have to prove it. So we'll see how that works out. Now, the other important thing I found from this is the government's going to respond November 28th. And we'll get a chance, and I will review. I probably won't mention this again till then, because we can only beat the horse long before we recognize it's dead. We've got to get a response back from the government to see how are they going to respond being called out for an overreach. And one of the critical factors to be determined here is that when RAICH was decided, there really wasn't a cannabis industry. We had just passed SB 420 here in California, which allowed collective and cooperative cultivation, which then grew our entire gray industry here. This came about before that was a reality, before the Cole memo, before any of that stuff. So the federal government could still sort of say with a straight face, they had a national mandate through the Controlled Substances Act to prohibit cannabis across the country. You can't say that with a straight face anymore because 38 states have some cannabis law. Okay, and the Cole memo said, leave them alone if they're following state law. Washington, D.C., which is controlled by Congress, allows cannabis. Okay, so this national mandate to prohibit cannabis just doesn't exist anymore. So we will see what the government has to say, and they may roll over and stick their butt in the air and go, hey, we're going to fight about this real hard. I don't know, because I'm not really all that impressed with the attorneys that the government's seeking into the Supreme Court to take a few shots. So we will see how this works out. I don't want to belabor this too much because I'm hoping myself that they take this case up. It takes 4 of the justices to grant certiorari. It's a discretionary writ. They don't have to grant it. They could say, no, we're not going to touch this, and then we're all SOL, which I mean shit out of luck for a while. Or they could take it up, and because of the way it was presented, there wasn't evidentiary hearings. There wasn't discovery. So what Josh Schiller and the Boyce firm did is they stacked their petition with as much actual information under penalty of perjury that they could pack into it. So when the court got a hold of it, it isn't like it's a blank record. Because what we do when you are in the trial court and the other side files a motion to dismiss, they take what you've pled as factually true, and what the other side is saying, so what? Even if it is true, you don't have a case. And in the RAICH case, the government said, so what? The Supreme Court said, Congress controls this, so you're done. And that's what the courts followed. The trial court said a couple of important things. They said that these companies have standing to challenge this, which is a big deal. Because without standing, you never even get in the door. And that they were actually damaged. Those are 2 important things for prevailing in the federal courts. You have standing and you have actual damage you can show. So I expected, we'll talk about this again. It gets really geeky, and I'm trying not to do that because you can get in the weeds way too much about this. I believe this is a gross extension of the Commerce Clause authority. I think they're over the front of their skis on this, and I'm hoping that they crash and burn, but we shall see. I'm going to throw this back at you for your comments. What do you think?
Well, Dale. I think you're right. You know, I think the big question is going to be whether or not the Supreme Court ultimately takes up this case. I agree with the whole assessment that they don't have technically jurisdiction on this anymore because of the evolution of the industry in all of these different states. I mean, I remember back then, people would say, hey, you know, once we get to 25 states that have medical, the federal government can't have jurisdiction because the majority of the states will have it on some form of the books. But now that was total BS that was spread around at that time. But it did get people motivated, and they thought that they would be able to enact something some way in that way. But to me, it's ultimately a decision of whether or not the justices take it, and knowing that the justices only take up 60 cases a year. You know what I mean? It's a thin line from your case being able to actually make it into that court. And then you also have Trump, you know what I'm saying, demanding certain cases get heard by the Supreme Court and whatnot. And so I think, you know, depending on how many of those cases Trump wants the Supreme Court to hear, is going to determine whether or not this case is ultimately heard or not. But I do think we would get a favorable ruling with the judges in the Supreme Court on the merits of this case.
Well, I would hope so. But, you know, just for a founding principle of federalism, president should have nothing to say about what cases the Supreme Court takes up unless they have original jurisdiction. And, you know, there's found that to be there for a lot of things. The rest of it, you know, he can say what he wants. It should not affect what they take. We all know in the real world it probably does. But I think the core of the conservatives on the court look at this and can clearly see what Thomas pointed out in 2005, that, you know, we've got this thing called the 10th Amendment. And what does it really mean? When they set this Constitution up, couldn't get it ratified without promising they were going to specifically spell out some rights. The 9th and 10th Amendment stand for the principle that people have more rights than we write down here, but the power starts with the people in the states. We'll peel off some particular powers and give them specifically to the federal government. Everything else belongs to the states. That's the founding principle. And since the New Deal, we have moved far away from that principle. We've got involved in people's lives. And I believe that there should be the power in the federal government to take emergency action. We've got a problem, but that should not change the entire character of the Constitution. And right now I see the Supreme Court trying to go back towards a period before the New Deal when they were involved in everybody's life. They let the states do that because they are the laboratory of democracy. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, you know, the election result, this guy Mondami, whatever his name is, we're going to have to see if he can actually deliver, because they allow the cities and the states to do stuff that, you know, some people will call socialism. I mean, I think that's a pejorative that's gone blown way out.
He's a socialist.
Oh, I get. He's self-professed, but he's now got to go find a way to pay for this shit, okay? And that's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, you know what, Dale, you know, let me tell you where the rubber really meets the road, because, you know, probably what's going to be one of his first things on the agenda is removing women's right to drive in New York. So the streets are going to be cleared up.
You guys, nosy enough.
Where did you get that one, Jason?
Just saying.
It's from the whole, they're all saying it's going to be Sharia law and freaking.
Oh yeah. It will be.
It keeps us from getting to the real issues, these kinds of things.
Those are real issues. Those are real issues.
It is just nonsensical. I hope that they'll take up the case. I don't know what the bets or the odds are on that, though, because I'm imagining if Trump is pushing other cases and they want to pocket, reschedule, deschedule for a campaign season in the future, because that makes a lot of sense not to do it right now, no midterms. It makes a lot of sense to save it for another presidential campaign, and it doesn't make sense from my perspective, of course, but from their perspective, they could save that one, use it later, because they love using populist ideas to try to win votes and then do nothing. I thought by this point, one of the administration's, Democrat or Republican, would have made that campaign promise and delivered. I thought at least we would be there by now. but maybe it'll be another 4 to 8 because they seem to be real slow on this. It's always when they're supposed to be doing it, they fall behind. Then it happens like 8 years too late, 2 administrations later, and you're just like, okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for cool. Hopefully the Supreme Court can do it and get this done, but I'm not holding my breath. This is a really interesting case, though. Dale, I mean, do you think that they actually have a shot here?
I do. Because there are a couple of like-minded thinkers on the court right now with Thomas. It takes 4 to get it to grant certiorari, they call it. Okay? Only 7% get taken up. I think that's the average. So not a lot taken up. But this falls in line with pulling back from the administrative state a bit. And that's a theme that I've seen from the Chevron doctrine and other decisions that courts have made, attacking substantive due process, things like that. They're moving the needle back pre-FDR. Okay? And I'm not saying I like it or, I'm just saying I'm looking at this and I see what's coming. And prior to FDR, no one would have ever thought the federal government under commerce power could do this kind of stuff. It just was unfathomable, okay? It wasn't until they threatened to pack the courts and we got one to flip that we started down a pathway of expanding federal government power beyond its enumerated power into powers that are just, we call them from the penumbra, looking in between shadows, what's in the law, and coming up with decisions. I think the trend is back towards original content, strict constitutional doctrines where you read what it says, and does it say in there you can do this? And the answer is not really. Then that's maybe where you stop and let the states do it. It's not all that popular with people who fought to get over some of the problems we had. When I was a kid, there were still black and white, drinking fountains in the South. Women could get fired for being pregnant. Gays just wouldn't admit they were, okay? It's not 1960 anymore. So some of the, the hair on fire stuff that's coming out of some groups, it's just not really where we are anymore. Maybe there's going to be a resettlement of some of these issues. I just don't know where it's going to go. And if your issue is substantially solved, then, now you need to look at the kitchen table issues that, I think that's what I heard the day yesterday. The Democrats finally realized we got to talk about what people are talking about in their house. Within 48 hours of getting your paycheck, half the people have spent all the money. Okay? Now what do you do? Now I don't have, my car breaks down and I got $1,000 to my name. Those are issues that my family, my grandchildren, my other, friends, they deal with on a daily basis. And if you can't focus on that and you're in the outliers, the middle 43% of the country is undecided. And anything you do to piss them off, you're ruining your chances to win the next election. Like I said, I'm channeling George Carlin. I'm watching this and my popcorn's ready. It's like, are either side going to understand that getting back at the other side is not going to win you any votes in this 43% that's in the middle? Thinks both sides are full of shit.
Yeah, I wish the Dems would take, if I was strategizing for either team, oddly enough, some of the Republicans have been more progressive in this field of cannabis and hemp than the Democrats. If I was them, why would you not take this issue and run with it? Because you can have such a different position. They're so close in their positioning. There's no distinguishing between Republicans or Democrats when it comes to cannabis, even though they like to pretend that they are. When you get behind the scenes, they're pretty much all the same. I don't understand why they wouldn't take something like cannabis and hemp, which can be a small business and kitchen table issue because so many people can do well if we have access to it. I don't know why they wouldn't take that and run like fire with it. It confounds me how much they work against themselves, because not standing the industry up only means you when it does stand up, you will have less and less ability to rein in any bad actors or pull back any, like when they talk about the hemp bans and everything, it blow because all they're going to do is hand everything over to illicit channels. And if you thought you had a hard time with regulated operators, you're going to have one hell of a time with the illicit market. Like it's not the old legacy illicit market. It's not the old legacy market I'm talking about. Most of those guys actually got into hemp. I don't get why, like as a parent, I would not, why are you making more of a mess than you really need to? You could manage this if you actually regulated it, but instead we're just going to sling mud like this is some kind of divorce case on the campaign trail and get
we love good divorce cases.
It's exhausting to the people. No, but everybody wants to move on. We don't want our country to operate like this anymore. When we're too busy fighting each other, the rest of the world is moving forward and we're sitting here distracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad. It's bad for us. It's weakening the nation. They need to get their shit together on both sides.
The nation is strong today. The nation is strong. Stronger than it was.
It is working. Whether people like it or not, the checks and balances are working. I was listening to some of the arguments this morning in the Supreme Court on the tariff case, and we'll see what they decide to do about that. But the strict arguments about following what law says or what the Constitution says is where I think the court is taking people to. We've gone off the head of our skis too much. We've lost sort of the sense of middle America. American dream. My kids can't buy a house. My grandkids, they're ever going to buy a house. They can barely afford to pay their bills. These are the real struggles I face. I mean, I'm an attorney. I'm not in that same boat, but my kids are, and I can't fix it for them. This economy is in the toilet right now when it comes to the American dream. And, that's a theme. And if either side doesn't pick up on this and go towards the middle and try to, ply votes from them, and someone's going to be on the outside of the candy store looking in again real soon. And it's hard to watch because, the American dream I grew up with doesn't exist for my children or my grandchildren right now. And Shaun, I don't know about how your kids are doing, but it's hard. To get to a place where you have more than 2 nickels in your pocket at the end of the month rubbed together, and that's just not a viable place for this country to be politically stable.
Well, I saw a chart the other day that was showing like inflation and levels of economic growth and income in households and the ability to household affordability. And the chart from like the 50s, this is like the price of housing, your income, right? And so for a while they were tracking together, and then you had a little dip. And then you see this huge divergence, and the cost of housing skyrockets to this almost impossible standard while the actual income with inflation is going down. The gap is getting huge. And you're right. If you're my age and if you're not already a homeowner, I'm worried about you. And I'm not blaming you. It's really tough out there, especially the job market. And then if you are a homeowner, you're not considering how you're going to put that into a trust or get it away from the sticky hands that Uncle Sam has, then you are also behind, because you could have your house, pay for your home, make the living, and then have it all taxed to hell so that your inheritance, you can't pass it on. They tax it, they take it.
It'll go into probate court. I know a lot about that issue.
I feel like I'm having to strategize like some dude on Wall Street for just being a regular mom trying to put together college savings and something that my sons can inherit. And I'm young, I'm fit, I was in the military, like I'm a more active American. I cannot understand. I don't know how other people are surviving out there right now, to be very frank.
They're not surviving. They're just getting by and taking up space and air and whatnot, and probably lines at the voting polls because they're probably voting bad at the same time too. But nonetheless, Moy freestyle.
Hey, this before we go, there was a Beatles song that went, tax the rich and feed the poor till there are no rich no more. And you keep taking money away from people that you're claiming are wealthy, give it to people who have nothing, at some point that well runs dry too. So I mean, there isn't a good answer here. No matter which direction you look, rays of sunshine are hard to find in a practical sense. And we'll solve this one way or another. I just hope it doesn't resort to violence or people acting stupid, because that doesn't really solve it.
It's definitely going to resort to that. That's for sure. But we did get 2 super chats in from Moy Freestyle Life, who says, "Why are the Democrats so emasculated?" And he also sent another one. Feminism, the boomers, and Democrats are to blame for the decline in the USA.
Aren't the boomers largely conservative Republicans, though?
No, they're not.
Well, I'm a boomer, and I was raised an Eisenhower Republican, so I don't buy that stuff. But my brother-in-law is a culture anthropologist, and in that field, they talk about the masculine and the feminine way of dealing with problems. And this has been, without being too reductionist, the Democrats have become feminine, and the Republicans become masculine. But I think that big in the middle, that 43% is going, you guys are both sides full of shit. Let's find a way to set it and cooperate. Because I can tell you right now, women have always had a lot of power, okay? We just need to bring them in and acknowledge their power. But, women do need men around. We need to acknowledge that. And you can't pretend like those aren't dynamics. We have a Paleolithic nervous system, and we're struggling to deal with goddamn cell phones. We're like cats chasing a laser light too damn much. And we need to focus on what are the problems we have across political lines. Because my family's got right-wing, Republicans and left-wing Democrats. They're all struggling with the same goddamn problems. We look at the problems and try to fix them.
It's because they're campaigning. They don't actually look at the problems. They're putting together campaign talking points and sound bites that are really zingy for TV, especially after we made the news like ESPN. That's all they're looking for. All we have to do, it's not even a red or a blue thing. We have to pull that shit away and actually look at the problems and just work on it. Just work on, actually do the work, not just talking about it, not just getting our little out. It's not a zero-sum game. It's so easy to shift your mindset to how can we create? How can we expand? How can we do more? Instead of, I got to take from here and I got to take from here and I got to pull from here. And then this is the tiny little bit that we're all hoarding and holding on to because we have so much scarcity that we're anxious and pissy and we can't get shit done, haven't gotten anything done for decades because we keep operating in this malfunction. It kills me. And I feel like cannabis could solve it. Cannabis, they could all smoke, we could all grow, we could all make money, we could give it to the world. For the love of God, these are my pipe dreams.
So cute. That is a great pipe dream. But nonetheless, we're gonna keep this train rolling. We're gonna stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it, you'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And Moy Freestyle through another super chat who says that happy wife, happy life, gynocentric BS of the boomers ruined America. I don't know about all that. I believe happy wife, happy life. That's for sure. Obviously, Moy Freestyle, maybe you've never been married to actually experience that. I'm not sure, but it definitely can be a rocky road. And speaking of rocky roads, we're gonna roll right into Miss Shaun Salvaje. She's a mom. She's a veteran. Served her country proud, and she's a mediator. One step before you have to take it to court and get someone like Dale to have your back. That's right, it is none other than Miss Shaun Salvaje.
Thank you, Jason. Or if you're in court and you're tired of fighting with each other, much like the Dems and Republicans, you can come see me. You can always come back to the
That's giving up, Shaun. That's giving up and waving the flag. If you've already gone to court, just finish it out and destroy them.
No, it's getting out smarter because, the destroy mentality, you know who wins in that? The lawyers. The lawyers.
Destroy them. Destroy.
The lawyers get paid. You will feel like shit at the end of all of it, even if you do win. My story is coming out of, it's coming out of my other home state. Yeah?
Shaun, it's like Mortal Kombat. You remember, finish him.
I would, but nobody has those skills to really finish anybody like that anymore. So I don't know. You guys, I'm going to need a second because it just closed down my story. It's coming from Minnesota. It's a little bit more of a softball from the Star Tribune. It's a softball, but a topic I think it's important for us to talk about, which is why I chose it. And it's related to the conversation we just had. So St. Paul from the Star Tribune, St. Paul is seeking a cannabis manager to help budding businesses. And I do want to get everybody to weigh in on this, because how do we actually put the right people in the right seats to get things done? The new city staff position in St. Paul is in the proposed 2026 budget and would be charged with simplifying the process of opening a cannabis business. This one's brought to you by Eleanor Hildenbrandt of the Minnesota Star Tribune. So aspiring entrepreneurs say opening a recreational cannabis business in Minnesota has not been easy, as they struggle to find locations and comply with local regulations. St. Paul hopes to change that by adding a cannabis oversight job to the city's payroll in 2026. That staff member will help businesses register, find properly zoned locations before they allow you to open them, and staying, New York, take a note, and staying within the bounds of local laws. The city of Minneapolis already has similar staff position, and people within the cannabis industry say it may be helpful to have a designated local contact. The rules of the budding industry are still evolving, and businesses have sometimes run afoul of city zoning when looking for places to rent. Taylor Sherrill, who works with many local Minnesota governments as a project manager of the hemp and cannabis programs at St. Paul's Legend Technical Services, one of 2 active cannabis testing facilities in Minnesota. He called the city's efforts to support and guide hemp and cannabis market quite heartening. Other businesses, and you know what? I'm going to just an aside here. I believe it. I grew up in Minnesota. I really do believe they are the kind of legislators who really do want to tease this out and get it done right. So I'm optimistic. Other businesses, however, are less sure that the position will clear up questions or delays. Alex Schaim, the owner of DNA Dispensary in St. Paul's McAllister Groveland neighborhood, says he worries that the position will be pointless. And he sounds like a cannabis operator, right? What's the point? Everything is terrible. He says he worries the position will be pointless and could duplicate or muddle regulatory work that the state already does. That's fair and valid feedback. The state already checks compliance. Schaim said, what happens when the city and state say 2 different things? In the 2 years Schaim worked to open his business, he only spoke directly with the city of St. Paul twice to help with the zoning issue. Eric Taubel, an executive director of the Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management, says cities are figuring out how they can best oversee the cannabis industry. There's no gold standard or blueprint for how you create a legal cannabis market in every state, and that is a true statement. Cities in cannabis, St. Paul is hoping to fill the position internally. That's a mistake. Said Casey Rodriguez, the spokesperson for the city's Department of Safety and Inspections. The job will pay between $73,000 and $102,000 annually, and the money will come from cannabis business registration fees. For that reason, I don't know if you should do an internal hire, guys. I really, you really should start sourcing people who are experts in the industry to help the state do this. I don't know why the state continues to want to create its own experts. I understand a level of distrust to an extent, but we need to move on already. Not everybody is a cannabis baddie hiding in the closet about to surprise you with some nefarious activity. Hire an expert, guys, please. Ben Koppel, the Minnesota Cannabis Business Services Specialist, says he fields questions from about 30 people every week. The city hired Koppel, he could be Koppel, more than a year before the September launch of recreational cannabis sales outside of tribal nations. He said the extra prep time was essential to be a great resource and immediate point of contact for businesses trying to open. Such city cannabis jobs, however, can be few and far between. Carol Moss, an attorney representing cannabis businesses for Helmuth and Johnson in Minneapolis, said that the positions are limited due to lack of money local governments can get from cannabis taxes. Cities lost their 20% stake of the state sales tax on cannabis and hemp products in June. The loss, Moss says, affects cities' abilities to oversee the cannabis industry. Do we need one for every city? I don't think that's necessary. As St. Paul looks for candidates to fill the job, Skim says he hopes people are patient, both with cities and dispensaries, as the industry is new for everyone. Some dispensaries have opened, and he says that cities and businesses will, quote, have an idea of how it operates. But then again, product is still very scarce. So let's overregulate something that we don't even have enough product on the shelf for. I don't know. Like, I thought it was supposed to be a softball story. And it still is. What I wanted to bring to the group is, how do we fill these positions? Because we're seeing this time and time again. The states want to get it right, but then we got to get the right people who have a level of expertise in this field actually in positions in the state. We can't just keep hiring buddies from the state. And I want to bring it to the audience and the other correspondents, you, Dale and Jason, to try to piece together, when is it too much and when is it just enough, and what kind of folks do we need to get into these seats? It's reminding me of an ombudsman case, I think it's either Maine or one of those East Coast, Maine or Massachusetts. I know they're like far away from each other, but one of them is looking for a medical marijuana ombudsman, and it would be good for patient advocacy. And these kinds of positions are needed as we expand the industry, but we do need to be very cautious that we're not just paying folks six-figure salaries to absolutely have no clue what they're doing because they've never worked in the space of hemp or cannabis before. What do y'all think? Can this be a good thing, or are we making a bigger mess? I'm thinking Minnesota could get it right, but there's always that opportunity to mess it up.
Minnesota is not going to get it right, first of all, and that's just nothing more than wishful thinking, Shaun, first of all. Okay. Minnesota is controlled by liberals, and so it's definitely not going to get it right. They're going to overtax and overregulate it just like they already have been doing. Okay. But I will say this, the ombudsman, I really like that word, and I think it's a very fancy title, and I think it's almost too fancy for the cannabis industry because they are not about that type of a life.
I would take one of those positions in a heartbeat. If they wanted to contract remote out, I would 100. We need more good people. We need more people who actually care about the people and the plant. And I like the ombudsman, but I think Minnesota could be right in hiring this extra staff position. I just don't, let's not go too crazy.
Well, I've always appreciated when they had someone in local government I could talk to about the inside baseball problems faced with every city or county here. In California, we have cities and counties. I like to talk to somebody, but I'll point out that no government I know of has some special person overseeing alcohol sales in their city or county. Okay? And we continue to think we have to do all this extra stuff in industry going. And one of the problems that I've faced is accountability. Okay, we have a real problem with government being accountable. I mean,
That's right.
You give them money and you go, okay, what did you accomplish? And the answer is, why are you asking? Well, because we're trying to accomplish something, and you've been funded to do it, and it turns out you're more interested in continuing your funding than fixing the goddamn problem we asked you to fix. And that's a continuing theme I have in the industry. I mean, they put people in places to where, you know, as you point out, Shaun, they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to this plant, the people you deal with, or the bigger state of the laws. And then people complain because it's not working, but you can't like go to government and say, hey, you're screwing this up. Can you please fix it? Because we've been doing that I've been doing this since 1999, almost exclusively. I've asked multiple times. They don't really give a shit about doing anything to make your life any easier. They're just not interested. You've got to make it economically viable for them. And that economic viability for the government is killing the industry because government's not really accountable for producing solutions. Once you get them started, they exist to exist. And that's just a runaround we run into. And in California, our first cannabis czar came from the alcohol industry. Well, those two are not the same industry. And I like Lori Ajax out here. I've talked to her many times about this, but she didn't understand We didn't come out of alcohol prohibition when she got her job. It's for decades down the road. We came out of cannabis prohibition. Now we're facing some unique problems that they didn't really have answers for, and they still don't have answers for. And it's confounding to me why we keep wanting to hire more people to get something done and adding more expenses to it. And then when the money's not there, like in Minnesota, they took their 20% tax away. Now they're broke. What do they do now? Absolutely nothing gets done then. It's a rat race that, frankly, I'm getting too old and cranky to have nothing but ridicule for. It's just frustrating.
I agree with you on the city tax reduction, not being able to fund it. Every city doesn't need to have a cannabis special, someone there to handhold your. But if the state could at least, especially because we zone other businesses all the time. But if the state, I did like the idea of putting people with. This isn't what they're doing though. So this is just being my imagination. I do like the idea of putting people with industry experience. Yeah, putting the right folks in the right seats to actually someone who really loves it to build the program out. Because if you do it, I get why there's a level of distrust when you have someone who's getting paid by the industry. You can't have them operating in government, and you have to eliminate the conflict of interest. But that doesn't mean you need to hire someone who hates it or is only for the government. Like I think about the gals at Blunt Strategies, those two, Leah, Layla, they would be ideal candidates for these kinds of positions where you could get someone who actually cares, wants to do a really good job, has experience working with government, understands their concerns, but can still help business owners to stand up a smart cannabis business. Because even at the end of the day, if we descheduled and had all of the freedom to do that, not everyone is going to succeed. And I'm okay with that, man. You got to succeed on your own merit. But if we could at least help folks get started while we're building this out, so that way it doesn't completely fall to pieces, it would be a good thing. They don't spend
no. People need to learn to figure it out and help themselves and fiend for themselves and figure it out. And that's how they become resilient. That's how they become good operators. Because otherwise, they're going to have this problem where they're always going to be expecting a handout because they don't have any real accountability in the first place, Shaun. And so no incubation, none of this extra bullshit, none of this fucking coddling bullshit. Just fucking, if you can do it, fucking do it. And if you can't, get the fuck out of the way.
If you can't, at least having a resource to help you see where all the other resources are, so maybe you won't fail as hard, is okay. But I hear what you're saying. We cannot be subsidizing businesses through the government. That's not how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to be private. It needs to be competitive. Having someone there to help be a good shepherd for the industry, though, and get them going, especially mom and pops, I think it's important. But, I do shit like that. So
you do.
That's the voters in this country loud and clear said, we want government to be accountable. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get paid for what I do. I have to give a bill. They paid for what I do. I have to produce things. And at the end of the day, they ask me, well, what'd you do this week? I can give them a list and I can send them a bill every month. This is what I do. And I think it was very telling when Elon Musk asked government workers, what were those things you did last week? And they shit themselves. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you exist just to move paper around? Why do you have a goddamn fax machine in the government? Why can't you do this stuff electronically? I mean, that's some of the frustration that a lot of us feel. It's like, not only is the government too big, it's a dinosaur. Okay, it's not keeping up with modern technology, and it's just very frustrating to watch. I mean, somebody getting multiple six figures every year to run a dinosaur, agency that really isn't helping anybody. And at the end of the day, you're wondering, well, why do you exist? And the answer is to keep my job and to keep my agency funded. I've heard that more times I care to remember, and my response is, well, then maybe you all need to go. And I'm not into ham-fisted approaches. That's why I oppose some of the stuff that Trump's doing. But even back in Reagan, he said, we're going to shrink the government by starving it. Well, think people get a little upset when you cause them too much pain. We're seeing that right now. But, if I go back to my point in my story, I think the Supreme Court is going to take us back to a period before we had the administrative state as much as they can. And then we're going to see what we have left over. And again, I'm playing George Carlin. I'm up here eating my popcorn at 30,000 feet going, I don't know where it's going to turn out, but this shit ain't working right now.
And you're right. Not everyone is a little psycho doing sit reps and war reports, that weekly activity report. I thought when he asked for it I understood why everybody was like, oh my God. But I also was like, what's the problem? Everybody should be doing a weekly activity.
It shouldn't be that hard.
It shouldn't be
that hard. You had to write a 5-paragraph essay to graduate English class.
You just need to do your bullets, and it's a level of accountability. I do have that. They train it into you at a certain level when you are in the military. And then if you get to a certain level of leadership, it is something that we need to train into our government operators, that we need to, as a government in general, state, federal, we need to have way more accountability. Those sit reps, war reports that are not just PR statements, is actually moving the needle and seeing what we're doing. I agree with you, Dale. It is very frustrating. Maybe that is one reason not to create these positions, that they always end up in that space. I am just always optimistic. There's another little nerd out there, kind of like me, who's going to do the good work. And if I can give them a shot, I want to try to create that opening. But you're right. More often than not, it fails.
Can I tell you why, Shaun, why there's not?
Why there are no nerds?
Why there's not like you is because you are a snowflake, and all snowflakes are all unique to their own individuality.
You're special, Jason.
Well, speaking of snowflakes, I have 2 final stories for you guys that I think, you know what I'm saying? I think you guys are going to get a kick out of the fact that I even chose to cover these stories today, because all of the and we do want to wish Anna Lewis's daughter a happy birthday tomorrow. She's going to be 17 tomorrow. So man, you had some back-to-back birthdays with your son just a few days ago, and your daughter, man, getting it, Anna, getting it. And happy birthday, Kendra. Her birthday is tomorrow, and I'm sure, Anna, you will remind us again of that tomorrow as well. But man, you guys, and I think you guys are going to get a kick out of the fact that I decided to cover these today. But Mikie Sherrill, she wins the New Jersey governor's race and supports legalizing home cannabis cultivation, she says. Democrat Mikie Sherrill has been elected governor of New Jersey, a victory that could bring major changes to the state's marijuana laws, particularly around home cultivation. Sherrill has consistently backed expanding New Jersey's adult-use marijuana system to allow residents to grow plants at home, something that remains prohibited under current law, and her position marks a sharp contrast with Republican candidate Jack Centrelli, who argued against any expansion and supported keeping the state's strict limits on cultivation and licensing. New Jersey's legalized adult-use marijuana through a 2021 voter-approved initiative, followed by the launch of retail sales in 2022. While the market has since grown rapidly, home cultivation remains a criminal offense, carrying a penalty, jail time, and fines. Sherrill said that allowing adults to grow limited quantities for personal use would align New Jersey with most other legal states and reduce the burden on consumers facing high retail prices. Her campaign emphasized building on existing legalization framework with policies focused on equity, affordability, and community investment. Anytime they say equity, you know it's going to go downhill, Dale. And with Democrats maintaining control on the legislature, her administration is now positioned to advance legislation that could legalize home cultivation and strengthen consumer protections with the state's expanding marijuana market. Well, New Jersey, you guys had a great market. Now it sounds like you guys are going to totally screw it up. Oh, we shall see. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Well, she figured out she better tack to the middle in order to win an election after the last debacle the Democrats had. And, you know, she's got some gravitas. She's a helicopter pilot, I believe, Naval Academy grad. I agree
She's
with
also
you,
an
Jay.
inside trader, Dale. She's also an inside trader. Don't forget about that, how she got all her money.
Well, part of the issue going forward in the industry is how much can we afford to support the social side of the industry versus keeping the industry alive. There's a balance act in there, and it's been a tough one because I know the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause is a real problem for these equity programs because they're in direct violation of equal protection of the law. And I'm not sure what's going to come out of the Supreme Court because they're looking at some of this stuff fairly closely right now, at how long we're going to allow the government to put their thumb on the scale in favor of one group, or they have to take the thumb off the scale and let it be equal. I don't know that we're there yet, but Jason, I don't have the vomit in my mouth you have when they mention equity, but I've certainly seen that trying to do too much for the people who are impacted made it very difficult for the industry to be viable. And that's just an observation. I went to prison for this plant, so I certainly understand people have been harmed, and it would be nice to help them. But the question is always, how is it going to be paid for? And I'm not sure that is well settled yet, how we pay for these kinds of programs. Home grow, I think that's a no-brainer. Let people grow the stuff at home. When they find out they're shitty growers, they'll go buy it at a store. If they're good growers, then that'll be what they do, and they'll test really high quality stuff around and play that game. We've seen it here in California because they're going to grow it anyway. You might as well stop the law enforcement dollars being bled out to go look for somebody growing a few plants in their backyard. I think that Minnesota lowered their fine for growing weed or for possession to $1. Good for you. Take away all the incentive, financial incentive to go after people for this. Just stop it. Just stop.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to be mad at them for growing their own weed when you don't have enough product on the shelf, though?
They have plenty of product on the shelf in New Jersey. New Jersey is like one of the other markets that is actually, people are actually doing well. And there's some profit that you can make. So they're doing fine. Like the New Jersey's market is the closest thing to a Missouri market, which is probably the best market in all 50 states right now for people to be an operator in.
I was talking about Minnesota. I hear you on Jersey doing well.
Okay.
Hopefully they get that home grow. The best equity program is descheduling and opening the whole thing up and just letting everybody have access to it. The best way to give disenfranchised folks an opportunity is to give them a freaking opportunity that doesn't cost multiple thousands of dollars or isn't created by a program that's going to get shut down by lawsuit. Please learn from New York. Don't be silly. Stop with let everybody participate and you can win. But at least she got the home grow, and she's another veteran helicopter pilot. There are some of us nerds out there trying to do this public service thing, so let's see. Hopefully
I don't know. I'm not getting too excited about her. We'll see what she does. I'll remain. I'll call balls and strikes, Dale. You know what I mean? But hold on. I am excited that says that she's gonna initiate home grow. How she initiates that and the mechanism for how she initiates it, I think is far more important than just her talking on a pedestal saying, "Hey, I'm gonna allow home grow." You know what I mean? Because that's it's more important of how you would implement that policy and allow for that. I am a home grow supporter, and the reality of operators that are against home grow they're just prohibitionists if they can't support home grow, because it's not going to really affect your bottom line in the first place, because those people aren't your customers in the first place to begin with. But this, we'll see, shall see. But and I have one final story for you guys today. If you guys have anything else to say on this one, please go ahead. Okay. All right. Well, I covered one winning Democrat yesterday, and I guess I'm going to cover two winning Democrats from yesterday, because Abigail Spanberger. She wins the Virginia governor's race and pledges to legalize marijuana sales, you guys. That's right. Abigail Spanberger has been elected governor of Virginia, a victory that could mark a major turning point for the marijuana policy in the Commonwealth. Spanberger, a Democrat and former member of Congress, has pledged to establish a regulated system for adult-use marijuana sales, a move that would end Virginia's years-long gap between legalization and retail access and end its title as the only legal cannabis state to not allow licensed sales. Although personal possession and home cultivation of marijuana have been legal in Virginia since 2021, licensed retail sales remain prohibited. Of the 24 states that have legalized adult use marijuana, Virginia stands alone in not allowing commercial sales. The legislature previously approved a bill to authorize retail licensing and taxation, but Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoed the measure earlier this year. Spanberger has said she would work with lawmakers to finally implement a regulated market focused on public safety, transparency, and equitable distribution of marijuana tax revenue. She also emphasized that the revenue should be directed toward public education and community reinvestment. Her opponent, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, I thought she was fantastic. She should have won. Opposed legalization and echoed the outgoing administration's position that marijuana poses public health risk and serves as a gateway drug. With Spanberger's win, Virginia is expected to revisit the vetoed legislation in the upcoming session, potentially clearing the way for legal marijuana sales to begin under her administration, you guys. Well, congratulations to this lady. Can't wait to see what she does and how she screws up Virginia. But, you know, I'm going to sit back and watch and eat my popcorn.
Well, again, she tacked to the middle. She appealed to the latest figure I saw was 43% undecided in this country. She appealed to them, and I think that was the winning. So you're going to see that keep coming, Jason. That's just they're going to throw out there.
I totally agree, Dale, and I feel that if Winsome Earl Sears would have came forth and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to implement, you know what I'm saying, some type of a cannabis program instead of having this hardline stance, I think she would have garnered a lot more support and been able to push it over the top. But you know what I mean? You know, these Republicans, they need to get their act together and stop living in this prohibitionist mindset constantly. You know, and it's a no-win situation. They need to get over the hump with that and get over their moral turpitude and really, you know what I'm saying, you know, give the people what they want, which is weed for the people.
Yeah,
well, that is necessary, but it's a bigger problem than that, Jason. And it follows patterns I've been following. I've been voting since 1972, and these oft elections are a microscope up the butt of who's in charge to see we don't like what we're seeing here, and we're not going to follow you into the next election.
I get that, Dale, but you know what? I'm not. The both of these two states. I've been talking with people all morning. They've been like, "Oh, the Democrats, they won. They handed it to the Republicans. They served you guys." Da 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 da. People have been calling me all freaking morning. Okay, but the reality of it is this: is that I didn't expect any of these Republicans to actually win in the first place. Okay, not to mention you're talking about 3 states. Okay, you're talking about New York, they're talking about Virginia, and they're talking about New Jersey. Guess what all of these 3 states have in common? In the presidential election, they all went for Kamala Harris. So let me tell you something. If a Republican would have won, we would have been able to serve some Democrats coming up for sure. But at the same time, Republicans do need to do better than this. But at the same time, I never expected any of these Republican candidates to ever win or they ever stood a chance in the first place. So therefore, you Democrats that are out there that are calling me and telling me and texting me and this and that, guess what? Your victory isn't that sweet, but it's only sweet to you. Because I live in this place called reality, and you guys live in this fantasy Delululemonville.
Delululemon. I'm wearing my leggings right now.
See?
They're not Lululemons. They're not Lululemons. Hey, I don't think specifically calling you to glow is like a real point of pride. No, come on, guys. If you're happy,
I get so many of these. I get so many of these things, Shaun.
I believe it. If you're happy your candidate won, that's great. Jason, I'm surprised that, that you would rather see the Republican candidate who was for a ban. No, we don't want that.
Well,
I know that you wouldn't.
This is the thing. This is the thing is they encompass more morality values that I encompass, and so yes, I want cannabis to be free and everything else like that, but I know that with these types of people, I can work with them and help them evolve. But overall, they'd be better choices for the safety of our country.
Oh my God, that's amazing that you said that, because you could literally take that out of my mouth and say the exact same thing. That shows you, to Dale's point, the 43% and more are actually more alike than you realize. But I agree with that.
I agree with that.
So I would have said that the Democrats seem to be more open to working together, although they often do think that they have the best, that they're the smartest in the room, which I also get accused of doing myself. So I want to see more politicians who are open to feedback. And I think we're starting to see some who really are. No one should be celebrating this wave. Calling it a blue tsunami is silly.
They're crazy.
I know. I think it's silly because, first of all, the game ain't over, honey. Trump is still the president, whatever that is. Whatever fence you're on.
He's going to be the president now, and he's going to be the president in 2028.
Let's get back to yeah, exactly. See, we don't want that kind of talk because we're trying to protect our American democracy. And so you could have said the exact same thing that you said about, I see it as a more of a signal, a little red flag. Every time they're a prohibitionist, it's a red flag to me that they're going to have issues of morality or that moral compass thing that you're referencing. That shows me that they're going to have those problems. It's funny that it shows you that you're seeing that you would have more alignment with them, because that just being a prohibitionist shows me you're so myopic that you're missing the big picture. And I can't vote for that.
Well, let me just state openly that your laughing gesture there, Jason, is patently unconstitutional. So you're advocating an unconstitutional adventure on the president. I just am telling you, I swore an oath. It's fucking horseshit. I don't support it.
Hold on a second, Dale. I'd like to address this. I'd like to address this.
Okay, then go ahead. Tell me how you think you can do this.
So the original Constitution, okay? The original Constitution.
Talking about the original Constitution.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying. The original Constitution did not include any type of term limits. And the fact that that term limits didn't come in until 1951 means that was amended, and so there could be another amendment to remove that. That's all that I'm saying, and so it's a possibility.
Wanted it that way, though. Didn't George want it that way? Wasn't Washington like, yo, we're trying to stay away from?
No, they did not have term limits. No, they did not have that term limit didn't get instated until 1951.
He wasn't, they didn't have the term limit, but he said to the people, no 3 terms. We're not doing this again.
Let me tell you something. If the people want to vote for someone, why are we saying that the people shouldn't get what they want? That's all I'm saying.
Because they amended the Constitution to say you can only be elected twice, and if you take over in the middle of the presidency,
thing to maintain control.
Shut up and talk it, right? You take over in the middle of a presidency and you get 2 years, you only get to elected one more time. So that's what they put in after FDR. The Constitution says he has no constitutional authority to do it. So you just think it's flippant to throw the shit out because you get people's butt to pucker up. Look at you. I had a little sister like you, and I used to beat the shit out of her because she thought it was so funny to say these things, okay? I don't have that anger problem with her anymore, but it's like, you think this is a game we're playing, Jason. This is not a game, okay? It is not a game. And I'll tell you, the Democrats got their asses handed to them. I'm not afraid to say that, but they're learning. You got to go talk to that 43%, have a beer with them and ask them, what the fuck can we do to help you? Because if you don't, you're going to lose your ass. And if they're not talking about this in the White House and in Congress right now, that we better change our game, we're going to lose it, and you're not paying attention to what's happened. It's that 43% who are undecided that's going to win the midterm election. If you're not focusing on them, then you're going to get your ass. And The Republicans got their asses handed to them last night. Let's just admit it, like the Democrats did. And what are you going to learn from it? To move on from there.
Again, I don't think the Republicans got their asses handed to them. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking about New York, we're talking about New Jersey, and we're talking about Virginia, which are all 3 states that all voted for Kamala Harris in the previous election. So I don't get how Republicans got it handed to them.
Well, there's more on local
They
level.
lost every one of the elections. That's how. When you lose,
That's
you
only
kind of
three-
get your ass
that's-
handed to you.
That's all the 3 places that they're talking about. So
That's
Well,
what
you
they're-
also got your
that's what
ass
they're
kicked in
talking about.
California with Prop 50. You guys
Yeah,
had your ass
yeah,
handed.
Oh, no, the Prop 50 is not ass kicking. We all knew that these guys cheat our whole election system here in California. That thing was
And Greg
passed
Abbott and
before
Trump
it even
wasn't
passed.
cheating when they did Texas. Just see,
California,
this is where you're
100% they
losing the 43%. Because they look at this and go, you're fucking lying by omission. Why can't you
No
admit
way. California
took
elections are totally rigged.
direction from the president and gerrymandered Texas, and Newsom responded.
Well,
I
hold on,
don't like any of it.
Voted for
That's
it.
what happened.
Hold on, Dale.
Texas
You want to
showed
bring up the gerrymandering? Hold on. You want to bring up the gerrymandering of Texas? That was a result of a lawsuit from that was initiated by President Biden. Okay? And
Okay.
so it's not that they wanted to do that. It was they were forced to do it from a court verdict.
No, we had thousands of people come and testify at the
Trump and
ledge.
Greg Abbott. Just stop.
We had thousands. We had people show up in Texas who said, "Do not do this." And they did it. So don't tell me that they were listening to the constituents. Everybody showed up to the Texas ledge, and the Texans didn't want it. And they did it anyway. They did it with no respect for the voice or the will of the people. They continue to do that. At least in California, they put it to a vote. They don't have ballot initiatives like that. You voted on Prop 50. You voted.
I wouldn't call that a vote, but
We
that's
didn't
cool.
even get to vote. We didn't even get to represent ourselves. And it is a serious issue. On that note, I love the comment. Someone added, if Trump gets to run for 3 sodas Obama, that would be insane. I don't want to see that happen.
That would
but
be awesome. Oh, that would be great. I would totally be down with that. I would be down with that. Yeah, a Trump versus Obama presidential 2028 ticket. That would be so great.
Obama would win that. Jason,
that would be so
the
good.
problem is that you guys are always so convinced that the other side is a demon or lying or full of shit. You believe your own bullshit and y'all can't move forward. And this is why we get this ping pong so violently. It's not, I don't even think ping pong's the appropriate word. We get these violent swings from blue to red, and the populace, the people, they're fucking sick of it. Like what Dale said earlier, people can't put food on the kitchen table. People are worried about receiving any kind of benefit from the government, earned or not. Some folks need that help. And we pay our taxes. I am happy to pay my taxes to pay $36 a year for someone to get SNAP benefits versus $2,000 a year for corporate subsidies. No, and it does get under my skin because they told us when we signed that oath of enlistment, it was against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that includes enemies to our democracy. No, it's frustrating. I hate those kinds of jokes too, Dale. They get really under my skin because it's a very real threat. And it did happen here in Texas where the voice and the will of the people were ignored. We told them not to gerrymander. It's already been done so many times. Biden wanted to fix racial issues, and all they did was use that same case to make it 10 times worse. And they didn't take our opinions into consideration. They just forced it on us. It is a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call to the Republicans that the people are pissed and they're not going to take this Marie Antoinette ballroom building bullshit anymore while they're starving. Folks are mad and they're sick of it, and they're sick of them on the elitists on both sides. It's gotta. Push comes to shove. It's got to end at some point, or else you're going to start to see some blood in the streets. And I hate saying that. I don't want that. I think anybody who's actually served their country and been to combat does not want this for our nation. And I'm going to chill because obviously I told you guys I don't have any indica on me right now. I'll just keep going if you don't stop.
Well, Steve Blessingham in the chat, he says, voter ID in person and make Election Day a holiday. I'm 100% in favor of that. And he says, and deschedule weed one more daylight savings all year. Yeah, we need to get rid of daylight savings time too. I'm totally in favor of that. It's totally ridiculous.
Fallback side or the spring forward side? Because I
really don't care. I really don't care. I just don't want to have to change my clocks. I think it's all stupid. I don't care. We can fall back, fall forward. I don't care which way, but I just want to stop falling. Okay, America should stop falling. We need to uplift America. You know what I'm saying? Read for the people, you guys. Yes. Happy day after an election day. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media partners Elias and Gabriel are somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you to the Venetian for housing me today here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.